the mission of Purpose on Tap is to encourage men to find purpose in Christ, but then tangibly, what does that mean? Right? Like, okay, we think, obviously we're biased, but we think we have a really great monthly gathering. We have an amazing environment at Monday Night Brewery. We have free beer. Us not included, we usually have a really good speaker. And we think it's this kind of flywheel, event that can continue happening, but we've continued to dialogue in the background on, okay, well, that's great, but how do we get men to pursue Christ further and find opportunity outside of our monthly event to continue growing in community with other men, continue pursuing their faith in a more ritual or habitual manner. And so what we thought we'd do, because we don't have the answer to that, we've struggled with how do we help men do that. And so what we thought tonight would be an interesting opportunity is to share a little bit about ourselves individually in the sense of what do we do outside of Purpose on Tap to help facilitate growth in our faith, growth in relationships that are surrounded, by other faithful men. And so we're just going to be transparent around how we got plugged into those, why they're important to us, but then also we'd love to kind of hear from you guys on what are things you're involved with, or if you're not involved, what are reasons why you're not involved, or it's hard to get involved. You may have moved to Atlanta, you may be new to your faith, you may not have a faith, and this is all stuff we want to learn and understand so that, especially as we go into next year, we can do a better job facilitating you guys growing in your faith. So that's the goal for tonight. And like I said, I actually think it helps that it's a little bit of a smaller crew so that we can actually have an open dialogue. But that's the point of tonight. So thanks for being here. We'll start with Beauty first.
Hi, my name is Steve Cesare. I'm Matthew's dad. And I've been honored and privileged to help these guys kind of strategically think through starting the ministry. Matthew and Calder were table leaders at the group I helped start at Peachtree called Ironmen. Started it in 1998 with the simple purpose of helping to equip and encourage men to be a positive impact for Jesus Christ at home, at work, and in the community. And literally ended up as one of the leaders of that. Again, in my own perspective, it was kind of a God thing. I never set out to be that. I never spoke professionally in front of people, and yet I ended up teaching every week anywhere from 50 to 100 guys, just sharing my stories and building camaraderie. And literally, I mean, it's been probably the single biggest growth area for me in my faith, being around other men, talking about real issues, whether it's relational, sexual, pornography, stuff that guys struggle with that guys don't talk about, and realizing, number one, I'm not the only guy that ever thought it, I'm not the only guy that ever did it, and being able to unwrap that and understand that there were guys that have gotten through it and how they got through that. And literally have a table of about 12 guys that know the good, the bad, and the ugly in my life and are there to encourage me and equip me to keep moving and growing in my faith. And I think probably the most important benefit to me, the guys that are coming, and they don't come every Tuesday, but they come when they can, when they're in town. A lot of them travel, and everybody says the same thing. They just don't have that type of camaraderie anywhere else in their life, especially guys that can share what's going on in their life. And I'll just give you one example, and then I'll pass to Mike. Have a guy that started coming his third time there. He shared with me that his wife has ALS. Basically, she's going to die in 6 to 12 months. Just think about it. He's 42 years old, has 3 kids, 12, 10, and 6. And I mean, it just rips my heart out. So you hear about that and you say, oh, I'll pray for you and your family. Well, yeah, we will. But Our table has set up a meal train. We bring in meals. One of the guys at the table got a maid to come for them. My wife and I made them dinner, brought it over there last night, and basically told them if they ever get stuck, we'll watch their kids for them. And that would have never happened without the group, without the camaraderie, meeting guys in a moment of crisis and having people to fall back on, guys that have your back and are going to be there again through the good, the bad, and the ugly. And they have to fly up to Baltimore every week for the next 6 months because she got accepted into a trial program to take a drug. So every week they go up there and literally we're on call to watch their kid. That never would have happened without this group. It never would have happened without my faith growing. So,
so just because it might be relevant to someone, so Atlanta was a new city, and you did not have a faith when you came to Atlanta. Can you you don't get 3 minutes, but maybe 90 seconds, like how did you get plugged into a faith and a community when you started at zero on both of those?
Again, I was fortunate to meet a guy named Brett Butler. The older guys know who he is. He played for the Braves. Brett mentored me, took me under his wing, shared his personal faith story. He played for the Braves in 1982. He introduced us to Peachtree Presbyterian Church. He got us involved when I started a company out in Seattle with a group called Pro Athletes Outreach, where I learned about my faith, I learned about small groups. And again, because of Brett mentoring me and pouring into me, I was able to bring what I learned out in Seattle back here to Atlanta, got plugged into a church, got a small group going with our men. We have 100 guys that show up every Tuesday morning now because of that, because of the ripple effect, because of one guy that had a strong faith and trusted God and took that and passed it on not just to me but to other people. And it's just amazing the ripple effect that's had. And as I said, Calder and Matthew were table leaders at Ironman for 7 years before they started with a couple of their colleagues, Purpose on Tap. So the ripple effect, you just never know where it's going to come from. But as you get plugged in with other like-minded guys, it becomes just an opportunity to learn and grow and take that next step, whatever that might be for you. And everybody in here has the ability to have an impact and an influence and make a greater commitment in growing their faith. I know I didn't know how until somebody came up and showed me. And that's why these guys are here to help you guys take that next step, whatever that looks like in your talk and your walk.
That's awesome. Good evening. Glad y'all are here. I'm Charles Simpson. Elizio and I are the two non-native Atlantans in the group. So which not that there's anything wrong with that necessarily, but
From New York.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, he counts too. In case you couldn't tell. And also, I'm drinking the Cookie Crumbles, and I highly recommend it. It feels like I'm paving a driveway in my stomach, but I'll probably regret this tomorrow morning. But it's good so far. So So one of the reasons I'm involved in all this is 2 decades ago, I very much was someone that you would consider the target demographic for a ministry like this. I grew up in Mobile, Alabama. I went to an Episcopal church. I went to an Episcopal school. I could tell you all about, the Rite One Eucharist. I could tell you, everything that happens at each step in the process at church. I, prayed, refrained from having sex, didn't drink, all these things that go along with it. And then I got released into the wild. I went to college here in Atlanta, and I played a sport that was year-round that involved traveling every weekend. And so not only did I went from going to church often and yet having zero understanding of the gospel, literally none. I could tell you stories from it, but I couldn't tell you the impact of it, the relevance of it, the why behind it. To playing a sport that just took me completely out of that routine, okay? But I was awesome at school, I was awesome at running, I had great friends, I had a gorgeous girlfriend, super happy. That's what life is about, right? Deferred law school at the University of Pennsylvania to move to DC and work on Capitol Hill. And so by about like my mid-20s or so, I had this life that was just like awesome, okay? But unbeknownst to me at the time, I had zero purpose whatsoever beyond, like doing cool stuff at work and, like impressing people who really at the end of the day didn't care about me, kind of like hated me, to be honest. Doing things to appease my parents, doing things that, like would build esteem in like the eyes of like friends, like other DC political types. And something very, very terrible happened to someone that was like tremendously important to me. And for the first time in my life at 24 years old, because I had this super charmed life, it occurred to me that like life's just not fair. Like for the first time, the idea of like living in a broken and perfect, like fallen world, like really truly resonated with me. But there was not a ministry like this in DC that could speak into like what I was experiencing and what I was understanding for the first time. Like the friends I was with were just kind of like, yeah, people die, life sucks, that's a shame, here's another beer. Hey, I heard you're going on Fox News next week, is that gonna happen? Who cares? Like who gives a damn? Like I'm humiliated that was even like a part of my life, So when Clayton Edwards shared this whole concept with me, I was an absolute hell yes, I'd love to be involved, I'd love to help in any capacity possible. Because I can relate to that in so many ways. Like whether you grew up in Atlanta or whether you're from like a small town in Georgia or whether you're here from Nashville, New York, wherever, moving to a very large city and hustling and getting just caught up in the whole ethos of it is hard. It takes a lot out of you. I can't imagine doing all that without like a firm rooting and a firm foundation, because invariably you're going to encounter things that are really, really frustrating. Just part of having ambitions and hopes and dreams is that sometimes they're going to get dashed. Sometimes they're not going to go the way that you hope they go. What do you do? So that's why I'm here. That's why I've really enjoyed getting to know all these people. My journey in Atlanta, I moved back here from Chicago about 7 years ago, and my life would not be as rich as it is if it weren't for this guy and these folks. I've learned so much from them, and I've learned so much from y'all too. I've made remarkable friendships. So I wish there were more things like this. I wish that there were more people doing things like this and being vulnerable and exploring things that really, truly matter, that like get you through more than today and tomorrow, but like sustain you for a lifetime.
Hey guys, my name's Alicio, and the way I got involved with Purpose on Tap was kind of about, honestly, right around this time last year, I was attending and they had a position open and I applied, and one of the main reasons why I applied was because I was just real passionate about people. And maybe about a year or two ago, I had a realization that, you only have capacity for so many people, and you have to be intentional with those around you. And so I kind of made it a journey to figure out who those guys were for me in my life, and I turned into, hanging out with these guys, Purpose on Tap, but my Wednesday bi-weekly group, Wing Wednesday, and a lot of those guys, we just kind of started doing life together, and that's where I started. I was putting a lot of time into, I'm 29, so I'm kind of at the age where these lifelong friendships are starting to solidify, but you're still trying to figure out who those guys are in your community, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get into Purpose on Tap, because we are a really big transient city, and a lot of us do find our ways here, and it's not necessarily the easiest barrier to entry when you just join a church. That community's been there for a while. So I love that Purpose on Tap is here. And Charles, I was born in Atlanta. Oh. So sorry about that. But even with that being said, it's still not easy to just cultivate community. It's an act, and it is intentional, and it takes work from both ends, and so that's one of the reasons why I love Purpose on Tap. And
How did that Wednesday group start?
That Wednesday group started actually out of another Bible study called Wet Wednesday for whatever reason. That's what the name it was. And that group just kind of grew to a point where it got too big. I mean, there's, I think, 20 plus guys going to it. And through that, it kind of just spilled over into another Bible study, and ended up being closer to home. And I mean, the need was just there. We have like 20 more guys in this Wing Wednesday group. So, and the guy that we had never met either, too, which is so cool. But I mean, it was just from one person's invite to this invite to invite. All of a sudden, we're getting up to the fire marshal limit of capacity in a condo. So, yeah.
So let me take it from there. Matthew and I and David over there, we unintentionally formed a small group in 2010-ish with a friend who worked at Peachtree Prez that was highly encouraged us to do that, and he said, let's have some beers and maybe talk about the book. We're like, okay, that's cool. And fast forward a few years, we were at 10-ish people, and actually all of us knew Clayton just from growing up here, and Clayton and a few other guys had said, hey, that sounds really cool, I'd love to join that. And we were at the point where it was, well, shoot, if we had a few more people, it's no longer going to be a small group, and it's just going to be a group. So I hate saying, no, you can't join our Bible study, but no, you can't join our Bible study. Yeah. And so, and so Clayton then just replicated that same model of, hey, let's just have some fun, and then when we get to it, we'll get to the text. And then fast forward a few years after that, Clayton came to Matthew and I and David and said, hey, why don't we figure out how we can scale this? Why don't we figure out how we can make this open to all of the guys in the city of Atlanta? And we spent 6, 7, 8 months going to all the different men's groups throughout the city, cherry picking all our favorite attributes of them, from time, location, communication, etc. And that's how we came up with the idea for Purpose on Tap. Actually, the name, Clayton and I were in my basement having home brews when we came up with the name, and had no clue that it was gonna turn into what it is now 7, 8 years later. So I just thought that was a good segue, Alicio, of kind of how this started for those who don't know. I do want to say something funny about the guy Steve talked about, Brett Butler, when he spoke. I thought that I was going to be really smart, and I asked him, I was one of the first people to ask him a question. And I said, hey, so what's the biggest thing that you've overcome in your life? And his response was something along the lines of, so do you mean besides beating cancer twice?
He had just shared his testimony about how he just beat cancer twice.
Yeah, he had just told us about how he had beaten cancer twice, and I just totally looked over that as not an obstacle.
But was it hard?
Yeah, I felt really small. It was awesome. Matthew jokes to me about that to today. But on the same sentiment that these guys are saying, and as Matthew opened, we'd love to hear from y'all. We know that we're not perfect. I was actually thinking about this as preparing for this a few days ago. We had a similar style format in February 2020. And Matthew was sitting 1 or 2 people down from me. I haven't told you I was going to say this. And he said, he said something along the lines of, we're sitting up here telling you what we do, but let me tell you a story about how I hit rock bottom in an argument with my wife 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, whatever it was. And so don't think that we're sitting here having it all figured out. And why that resonated to me is because my wife has asked me for the past week, hey, so who's the speaker? What are you guys talking about? And we've been having some issues, just communication-wise, and I didn't want to tell her, oh, well, I'm sitting up there with a few other guys to talk about how good we are and what we have going on, knowing what she would say about that, and probably call Matthew and be like, do not let him touch the microphone. Yeah, it's just brutal honesty there. So just know we're total idiots as well. And we take all feedback and questions and all that stuff as far as trying to learn a little bit more about you guys and what you are thinking that could help make us more successful next year.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually a good segue into, again, we really enjoy this monthly event, but from a substance standpoint, I think we'd be the first to tell you that I'll speak for myself, what helps me is having more accountability and more touch points outside of just this monthly gathering. And although it's nice, it's fun, the whole meat of your faith and relationships come with being able to dive deeper. And so for me, the Bible study that we started, back in 2010 is a huge touch point for me. These guys know what's going on in my life. This is an opportunity to understand what's going on with other men. As my dad said, we're all going through similar stuff. You're not the first one to have that struggle. You just may be the first one to talk about it. And then, it's like, I don't know if it means I have, more baggage and more crap, but it's like, I feel like I'm involved with a lot. I got Purpose on Tap. I got that Bible study, another small group that meets, every now and then. And it's, for me, what's so important about those groups is that it's an opportunity to be real, to be held accountable, and just like anything else, it's like fitness for your faith, right? If anyone works out, or it doesn't matter if it's fitness, but if that's what I relate to, it's like, okay, if I'm only doing it once a month, you're not in great shape, right? And if it's if you're only doing it once a month and drinking while you do it, you're not going to get in great shape. So, but the reality is that, okay, hey, how do I create systematic opportunities for me to get involved with other men? And then even a step below that is, how am I doing it by myself, right? Like I operate best, like when I'm like, hey, when is Matthew on all cylinders? It's when I have gotten up before my family. I've had the opportunity to spend, I don't care if it's 5 minutes, literally if it's 5 minutes, just quiet around reading a little devotional or in prayer or listening to a song. Like, if I can do that first, my day is so much better. Like, I enter the chaos. We just had our third kid. There are moments where you hate everything about what's going on inside your house. And you're just like, if I can have, and they're long moments, like the moments last weeks. I'm just kidding. But like those moments, like that's why for me, there's ritualistic things that I try and do that are systematic, that are by myself. And then there's these opportunities with touch points that are more on a weekly basis. And for us, our hope and goal is that guys in this room have the opportunity to find touch points beyond Purpose on Tap that lead them to systematic individual routines, right? And so, like I said, everyone's path is different to that. My dad's path is different to that than mine. Alicio's is different than Charles's, and so that's kind of why tonight we don't want to talk about Purpose on Tap. We want to talk about what's outside of Purpose on Tap, right? Like if there's, and again, open it up to you guys around, if there's stuff, we'd love to hear what are other guys doing in Atlanta that you're involved with, whether it's through a church, through a men's group, and if you're not, like, what are the hurdles that you're experiencing? What is hard about getting involved? What has been something that, or maybe you tried something and disliked, right? So this is meant to be open dialogue. Obviously, we can talk more, but really want to allow you guys to share feedback. Again, sure, it can be about Purpose on Tap. Totally welcome for that, but more so outside of Purpose on Tap if you have thoughts around things you're doing.
So I'm in Steve's Ironman group on Tuesdays, and it's a good touch point during the middle of the week. I think a lot of guys think that stopping to meet will slow them down in their careers, but it's actually the opposite. If you take that pause, you'll come back a lot sharper, refreshed, that encouragement. So if you're ever invited to do something like that, give it a shot and just see how it works with you. That's what I'd say.
How'd you get invited?
I got invited through a mutual friend at church at Peachtree Presbyterian, and I see Steve at Ironman often. I've only been to this Bible study one other time, and it is a great touch point, usually a speaker, book signing, it could be something like that. And next time you come, bring someone also. It makes it a lot more fun.
Break 4.
Yeah.
Good job. And again, just to Cameron's point, we have 100 guys that show up on Tuesday morning. I would say half the guys at our table are there because I'll just give you another example. My wife and I are sitting at a bar a couple weeks ago. We strike up a conversation with a couple next to us. They just moved from California, had been married for a year, and I need to get plugged into a Bible study. Do you have anything? You know, after we started talking and hearing their story, invite him to Ironman, and now he's showing up at Ironman. And to me, that's, you know, becomes kind of like your personal testimony. You know, we all think when you hear like somebody's a disciple, oh, that I have to be like John the Baptist or, you know, like Paul, the Apostle Paul, when, you know, we all have different gifts and abilities. And to me, that's been my biggest ministry, is inviting guys to Ironman, just like guys invite guys to come down here. And I know, you know, you're sitting out there, because I was sitting out there when I was your age going like, you know, God can't use me. You know, if people knew my life and what happened to me, you know, they would be like hypocritical, and, you know, who am I to talk to people about, you know, Jesus when I have had such a screwed up life. And literally what you learn through the process of growing your faith is that, you know, that's what we're put here for. Love God, love other people. We love other people by serving them at home, at work, and in the community. And it took me a long time to get comfortable and confident with that. But again, it was through people that poured into me, and then me pouring into other people, and it's just a ripple effect. And again, you know, when we go through the political cycles like we do, I am more and more convinced that change, real change, is going to happen when guys like us take the time and make the commitment to pour into other guys and become part of the solution. Because if you're not part of the solution, we become part of the problem. There is no neutral ground. So again, whether you guys know it or not, there's a burden put on you and us to become part of the solution and become part of the positive things that happen, and to pour into other people. And when you see somebody that's struggling or needs help financially, relationally, emotionally, whatever it might be, you know, to be the answer to that person's prayer, and not just, you know, dear God, gimme, gimme, gimme. And that's how I started, you know, gimme, 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 show me, show me, show me. Then I was like, you know, stage 2 is like, dear God, please help the Smiths and the Jones. And then as I matured in my faith, it was like, dear God, help me to be the answer to somebody else's prayer. And I can tell you, when you open yourself up like that, the floodgates of heaven open up and stuff just gets plopped in front of you. Thank you for sharing.
Any of you guys involved in a small group currently?
So, men's group, Grace Midtown, mix of ages. You know, I was, when I joined the group, was probably mid-50s. But it was a group that really had diverse ages. And the neat thing about it was that we all learned from each other. You know, as one of the older guys, I was really blessed by being able to understand some of the issues that, you know, the younger guys were dealing with, and that I frankly didn't understand. At the same time, you know, the younger guys were able to hear from some of the older guys just some of the things that they might want to think about when they're approaching marriage or in their first year or two of marriage. And when they hit some of those walls, realize that, no, there's no answer. You know, marriage can be hard, you know, particularly for husbands, and that we're in it together. So if there's one thing that I would say is put yourself in situations where you're willing to not have the answers. You're just willing to just do life with other guys.
So something that Steve had said, which is funny because it's brutally honest. So the way I got invited to Ironman was from Steve's wife. One Sunday, we're talking after church, and she's like, "What do you do on Tuesday mornings?" And I had no clue Steve was involved. Yeah, I had no clue Steve's involvement or any of that stuff. And actually, Matthew and I had just kind of known each other by name at that point. But it shows the testament of going out on a limb and inviting somebody because of her inviting me. Then a few years later, Matthew and I ended up being table leaders for 7 years, and then stopped being table leaders because we said in our spare time, we want to focus on growing Purpose on Tap. And all that came from your wife or your mom just asking me, "Hey, what do you do on Tuesday mornings at 7 a.m.?" Which typically it's like, well, sleeping or driving to work. So I just wanted to echo that. And to your point, one of the things I enjoyed most at Ironman was, at the time, I would have been early 30s and late 20s, and was getting that guidance from guys that were a season or 2 seasons above me, and they'd already been through this. They're like, "Oh yeah, I've seen that video. Let me tell you how it's going to play out." And hearing that from somebody other than my father, because I won't listen to him just because he's my father, even though he's probably right, but hearing that from other trusted advisors, it really resonated with me, and it really helped me become a sharper individual.
So my biggest question is, hearing everyone talk about men's groups, and I'd love to hear from the panel or anyone else who's inspired to an answer. If you would name one characteristic you would say that makes a good men's group, what would it be?
So Calder just whispered to me consistency, and that's what I was just about to say. And I think I'm translating this the same way, just the consistency of meeting, right? Because 90% of it is just show up, right? Just show up. Just show up tonight, right? Just show up, once you're, again, not to keep going back to fitness, but like show up at the gym, you're going to work out. And so I think what we've found is that when our small group is having momentum and really, intimate meetings and substance at the meetings, it's when it's consistent and it's not like, oh, we haven't met and, we've canceled the last 3 meetings, like what's going on? It's when there's buy-in and consistency is when I've found the most success.
Well, and I just want to add on that something. So we've been meeting for like 12 years now, and it's always been every other Tuesday. We've switched times a little bit as kids have come, but as of 2-3 months ago, we noticed, hey, if there's 10 or 12 of us, less than half are coming, for whatever the reason is. And what if we reapproach how often we meet? And so we completely changed it up from, call it meeting 25 times a year to 15, but it's now 30 minutes longer than it was. It's now not every other week, so maybe we'll go 6 weeks or 4 weeks without meeting, and then have a few back-to-back, and we kind of tailored it around the school calendar because we figured out that works best with our schedules and summer vacations, etc. So I'll just share that and tying into what Matthew was saying about how we are trying to improve and evolve into the next version and better version of Purpose on Tap is, hey, maybe 10 times a year, every month, once a month, other than January and July, maybe that's not the answer. Maybe it's quarterly. Maybe it's not. But I just wanted to share that because we've seen a lot of success over the past few months. I know when we had it on Monday night, and we moved from Tuesday to Monday due to guys that were traveling for work. And I had to miss the last time because house stuff, and you miss it. You're like, oh shoot, I haven't seen those guys in 6 weeks. So and so was just struggling with fill in the blank. I haven't heard about that. I want to go. Versus when it was every other week, it was like, well, shoot, I'm going to miss this week, and I'll just hear about it next week. Just wanted to share that.
Yeah, consistency, absolutely. I think vulnerability is a really big part of that as well. And that word gets so overused. But let me tell you something. When I moved from DC to Birmingham at 26 years old, the first thing I did was get plugged in with a small group at this massive church that I went to. And it was one of the first opportunities I had to just listen to people actually talk about real things that were happening in their life, their marriages. These were people that were in their mid-20s and many instances in their early 40s. And talking about frustrations in their career, frustrations from their childhood and things like that. And this was 15 years ago, and those are some of the most durable friendships I have today. And I haven't even lived in Birmingham in, 12, 13 years. Part of that vulnerability too, I think also means doing things outside of the group setting, like that one night a week or once a month, just grabbing drinks, playing golf, going to a ball game, going fly fishing, shooting guns, whatever, I think another thing too, and this is going to sound maybe playfully misogynistic. I've been in small groups that have been co-ed. I've been in small groups that have been couples and things like that. I think for single men in their 20s, there is kind of this tendency, if you're in a co-ed group, there's an opportunity to maybe meet someone, and that's fine. There's I mean, you don't want to overtly cruise for girls at church, but shoot your shot if you get it. But I think that being in a group of men that just outside of this environment where, you're just kind of coyly putting your best foot forward, where you can really truly be candid with each other about things that I think your hand just went up just then.
Yeah, I did, because you said best foot forward.
Yeah.
One of the things and I agree with you 100% about
Yeah.
vulnerability, but one of the things that Steve said earlier, I can't agree with more, is authenticity.
Absolutely.
It's not about putting your best foot forward. It's about putting your worst foot forward.
Right.
And knowing that we all suck.
Yeah, absolutely.
That we've all been through it. And I'm not a horrible, well, yes, I am horrible. I am not uniquely horrible because we all struggle the same way.
No, absolutely. And so what I was getting at with that remark is that when, when you're in your 20s and you're single and you're in a co-ed group, there's this tendency to hold back because you want to make a good impression, That defeats the entire purpose of being in a group like this. You're never, not only you're going to be able to not get as much out of it, but you're not going to be able to bring as much to the table to impact other people and mold them and really at the end of the day empathize with them.
Yeah, one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is we're fortunate to have some of these groups that are established, and we had a young adults pastor that sort of helped us do that years ago. And because I didn't feel equipped to ask my drinking buddies, how are you doing? Let's talk about the Bible. I didn't feel like I could do that because I was with them Friday night at the bar. And so I think is a question is sort of just, you have your golfing buddies, your poker buddies, your neighbors, your coworkers, you have groups of friends in your life, and turning the corner from talking about the Braves or talking about sports or talking about girls or whatever to asking the question, how are you doing really? That's the big turning, the key thing. And you can just start meeting for breakfast with 3 other guys and talk about life and laugh and joke and do whatever. And then for the last 5 minutes of the conversation or the breakfast or the dinner or the round of drinks, just say, let's go around. How's everybody doing really? How you doing? How can I pray for you? Whatever. I mean, you can start like that. And that's when you turn the corner, they go from your drinking buddies to your true friends, and that friendship that just builds upon itself and creates a community that's reliable. So, thoughts on that?
First of all, I think I'm about 5 months in, coming routinely, and I want to. I know Frank pretty well. I want to just thank you guys. Let's have a golf clap for everyone. This is great. You mentioned it. The venue, the idea is phenomenal. I do have an idea, however. This happens to be a really good friend of mine. And Steve, you were at our table. I'm at Leadership Ministries. We meet every Friday morning in 1277 Leadership at Lenox Park. And I guess what I would say is this is so fantastic. What if there was like a resource center? This fine gentleman who just got up meets at another one. I'll bet you if this was a full crowd, we probably have 10, 12 different ones. And I would say fit is an issue. It could be fit between the time you meet, the topics, how deep you get. It's not everything's for every person. But I think we can all agree that we need to lean into Jesus a little bit more to make, like Steve said, to be better husbands, fathers, and leaders in our community. That part I know there's just unwavering we agree with, right? And if there's just more resources, and your son, Steve, I forgot your name, sir? Matthew, you nailed it about the working out. This is an amazing once a month, but if we had a resource center where we could, go to or maybe just a mention where someone like my good friend here, it wasn't a great fit at 1277 for us. Good, bad, or indifferent. And it could, and so like if that can lead to the consistency and all the things that we talk about, and I think the answers are all right here, the reality, I think, right? Especially if it was the weather stinks, so that's right. But if it was a full crowd, I'll bet there would be 10 groups that meet similar to what we talk about. And I think that would be a huge build upon what you have generously given in this forum and the speakers you have and all that. That would be my only suggestion. And I'll be glad to, and Steve, you were at our table, by the way, about 2 weeks ago. Thank you. And I would never want to compete. Like you said, there's different fits. There's no one's competing here, for crying out loud. So with that, I'll
that's what's your name?
Todd Harlow.
Todd, so this will show you how much idiots we are. Like 3-4 years ago, we even had note cards on the back that was like similar to what you're saying, because our whole purpose was like, we don't care if it's, Leadership Ministries, Ironman, Grace Midtown, Crew, like we don't care. Like go to something else besides Purpose on Tap, please. In addition to Purpose on Tap, that was the whole goal. And so we had a note card that we used to hand out. And part of it is like, why are we not doing that anymore? Why did we stop? Because it had on the back, hey, Ironman meets Tuesday mornings. Leadership Ministries meets Friday morning. Because like you said, is it time? Is it location? Is it, I'm going to try Ironman out. I'm going to try Leadership Ministries out. Todd's way cooler than Steve. I'm going back to Leadership Ministries. He wears a cowboy hat. He has 10 fingers. But yeah, so one, that feedback is awesome. Two, just owning up to we have work to do as a leadership team to just there's some low hanging fruit as far as hey, even tonight, there's probably 5 different groups, right? Where it's okay, it'd be very easy to just say, Herb, yeah, it's hey, please feel free to invite whoever you want to the Grace Midtown group, right? But yeah, anyway, so that is awesome feedback, and homework for us for next year is creating that. I'll repeat. He asked, what are we asking of you guys? Maybe you guys might have different answers. My initial answer is bring someone, continue to bring people, because I think you heard it more than once, and people sharing was they were invited by some. My dad was invited by Brett Butler. Calder was invited by my mom. That personal invitation is huge, and one of the things we think is a positive about Purpose on Tap is anyone can be invited to this. I don't care if you're a pastor. I don't care if you're an atheist. You find value in this environment, and so we wanted to foster that opportunity for you to say, I've got a buddy at work, and I don't care where that buddy falls on the spectrum. I can say, hey, you should come to Purpose on Tap. There's free beer and there's cool dudes, right? Just check it out. So my first ask would be continue coming and encourage you to invite someone to come with you, whether it's the same person or a new person each time.
Yeah, at Ironman, I always kind of jokingly say we're looking for fat men, men that are faithful, available, and teachable. And there's guys that have been coming for 10 years that are probably no different today than they were 10 years ago, and we love on them. But the guys we really look for are the ones that are emerging table leaders, guys that get it, guys that, again, the hardest part for guys nowadays is being available, because we have, so much going on at home, at work, and in the community. And just being here tonight is a big commitment that you guys made, because there's so many other things you could be doing right now. And again, to me, it's seeing the guy that the light bulb goes off and gets it, and then is going to take the next step. The next step might be leadership ministries. And it's funny because, 10 years ago I met with Chris White and said, why don't we set up a distribution brokerage? I don't care where they go. Same thing he said. We know that Purpose on Tap is kind of a top of the funnel organization, and they're very good at it, except for tonight. And that the whole idea is, how do you get them to the next thing, again, whether it's grace or whatever. You shared a story before talking about, the younger guys and the older guys at the table and learning in both directions. And I just want to share a quick story because it just is it's relevant and funny at the same time. One of his college buddies came to our table and sat at our table for a year. And his ongoing question was, how do you know when you're ready to get married? How do you know she's the one? How do you know? How do you know? How do you know? And we get all of these questions going around the table. So I finally said to him, I said, look, why don't you come out to dinner with my wife and I? We'll take you to a nice restaurant. We went to Preachy's and we sat there, and my wife had not met his girlfriend, his fiance, and so we sat there, and literally after 5 minutes of meeting the woman he was talking about, my wife looked at him in the face and said, if you don't marry this girl, you're an idiot. And he's now married with child number 2 on the way, right? But I mean, again, it's funny, but it's like, answering those questions and really having guys that have, been a stage or 2 ahead of you. Not that we know it all, but, we know a little bit and can share kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly, and try to help you guys avoid some of the pitfalls that we fell into. So, again, just to echo what everybody said up here, we don't care where you go, but find a group, try different places, or if you can't find one you like, start your own. What's the name of your guys' group? I love their name.
We're not allowed to call us. We started out as heathens, but we now are now we meet at the Pancake House. We're like the Pancake Bros or something like that. Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking, and part of it is just the effort to be here, the effort to bring guys, and we use the term ambassadors. I mean, we want men to be ambassadors for Purpose on Tap. I don't know if you're involved with things outside of Purpose on Tap, but the idea is you bring a guy to this 2 or 3 times, and then they might want to go with you to the thing that's the next level down, right? Down the funnel. And that's our goal. Yeah.
One quick thing to add, and I'm probably going a little rogue and sharing this, so my apologies in advance. Yeah, seriously, get the hook, bring him off the stage. Thank you for asking, because we actually do have some leadership opportunities coming up. So this was inaugurated in 2016-ish. Let's say this has been going for like 6 or 7 years, okay? And surprise, surprise, like men over time, they get married, they have kids, they have different seasons in life, and there are only so many hours in a day, right? People move, So we are endeavoring some thought around like what the next generation of leadership at Purpose on Tap look like. And so if this is something that you feel enthusiastic about, it's made an impact on you. It's like, touched your heart. It's created new friendships. This is something where it is an opportunity for you to like give of your time and contribute and help do that for like the next generation of people. So if it's something that you feel called to do, hop on the website. There's a form you can fill out. It'll ping like Calder and Matthew and all us, and let's have a dialogue. Okay.
By the way, my name is Greg. I think to answer still going your question over there, the one kind of word that comes to me kind of resonates is engagement for these things. Talking about vulnerability and consistency and these types of things. But if you're just not engaged, like I could just sit here and just consume content, right? And so it's kind of creating those environments for engagement and kind of putting people in a little bit of a situation to be engaged and to be vulnerable. With that said, I think a couple ideas for me for this group maybe to consider is when you do have some new people, go ahead and have that next kind of event maybe planned out to kind of get them have a little more stickiness. And whether it's, they can pay their own way or whatever, say, hey, which one or whatever you guys want to do, whatever's in the budget. I think that would go a long way, because at least that would be that next event, new people are meeting, and just for the new ones, and then kind of see if they come back to the next one. And then also kind of get the feedback loop from that. The other is, I know we talked a lot about small groups. I know it's been impactful for me, some impactful, some not, depending on the level of engagement. If you guys aren't looking to create small group environments, because that's like a huge project in my mind, and the partnership idea is to kind of partner with some other organizations that have small groups, and just let them know about Purpose on Tap. I don't know, like I go to Buckhead Church, so I don't know how much the small group environments know about Purpose on Tap, for example. But if they kind of...
They know.
They roughly know? Okay. Well, I've never heard Purpose on Tap ever communicated at a Buckhead event. So my invitation was through other means. So if there is something like that, say, hey, this might be something different for your small group or whatever the case is, it could kind of complement the small group environment that they already have. And then this group can kind of be seen as like an incubator for people to join into other small groups. Because they're always looking for good dudes to kind of join, right? So they might lose someone, for example, like what Charles was saying, because of traveling, and they say, we met you at Purple on the Tap, are you in a small group, et cetera. So that was just kind of some ideas flowing in my mind as I was kind of hearing the group.
That's great. Yeah, because one thing, because of the spider web of networks, we had lunch yesterday with the small group, or the young adult, had a young adult at Buckhead Church, and how easy would it be for them to say, hey, small groups, here's an opportunity for you to go enjoy some beer with your small group and hear a speaker. So I think, that's really good feedback. How do we make this group less white, more diverse? Part of it, I think, has to do with, like, what are we doing individually? Because, again, a lot of people are here by invitation. Where are the black guys and Asian guys that I invited? I didn't invite them, right? I didn't invite anyone tonight, but I'm just saying, I think part of it is probably who are we individually reaching out to bring here. That's a challenge, I would say.
If our goal is to create this community,
Yeah.
we need to make the community.
Yeah, I agree. Totally. Yeah. I would say in retrospect, when we've had the most diversity is when the speaker's been diverse, but it's because they invited people. And part of that's just probably a challenge of what our natural market is and who we're choosing to invite and be intentional. Yeah, totally. Well, that I would say the way is to be intentional about inviting those folks, which we haven't been intentionally not doing it. That's a great challenge for sure.
Matt and Steve, you've both been acquaintances for many years. Let me address that last question you just had. Yesterday we had 155 folks in the Buckhead Club. It didn't look like this room. We had Asians, African Americans, we had pastors, we had lay people, we had seekers. If that's the type of folks you want to bring to this room on this type of night, we can certainly help you with that with Christian Businessmen's Connection, because we have those folks seeking small groups. We offer a lot of programs which allow people to blend together for an entire year. And that may not be people's desire, but we work with all different churches, we work with all different races, we work with all different socioeconomic levels to provide a benefit for those who want to be transparent and want to be connected. And if that's the goal of some of the folks in the room, then we can help you with that. I've known you and your dad for years, Steve especially for many years. We've had many projects together. And just to look at what happens in just Rome, the co-working space here in Atlanta. When you walk in that space, you know there's collaboration, you know there's diversity, you know there's a camaraderie that does not exist in many places in Atlanta. And that's a severe or sincere or a challenge in the Southeast, period. So those are things which I think this group, can address. And as you said, there are very few folks who are not like, quote, us in the room. I don't know who's in the room, but is anybody over 80 years old in the room? I'm not 80, but that's okay. Steve, how old are you?
68.
58, okay. Well, I'm a little older than that, but the point is, we have to be reaching back. We have to reach back to help people understand that people who are over 50, 60, 70 years old are not as biased as folks think we are. We've just gone through a very divisive election in Atlanta, an election in Georgia, and we've gone through a lot of divisive elections in the USA. And if we are to remain the number one country in the universe, / the world, / the earth, then we really need to do some things differently. We need to be transparent, we need to be sincere, and we need to be effective. And that's what your organization is being. It's effective. And I appreciate your questions tonight. My name is Michael Moore, and if you'd like to chat with me later, I'll be glad to speak with you. I'll be here a while.
Thanks. Michael. Guys, we need to close it up, but appreciate your engagement. We appreciate you being here. We will not meet in January. We will meet in February, and we hope February 1st. We hope everyone has a wonderful Christmas and end of the year. But the other thing, you don't have to just email us through the website. We also need to probably do a better job of giving out our personal emails and cell phone numbers so that you guys can feel comfortable reaching out to us directly and not having to work for it to connect with us. So we'll stick around if anyone wants to come up afterwards, but thanks for being here.